Hey, just a heads up, this movie is going to dive very deep into spoilers for Disney's Strange World. If you haven't heard of it, go check it out. It's pretty good. It's streaming on Disney Plus, and I'm sure if you don't have Disney Plus, you know someone who will give you the password. Anyway, yeah, it's a kids movie, and it's pretty fun visually. It's also funny if you enjoy kids movie humor. Like, it's not a bad one, and it has a pretty progressive message, if that's something that you're into. It's something that I'm into. It's about environmentalism and shit. So, yeah, go ahead and check it out. Anyway, let's get going. I'm gonna jump to the video essay now. So, I'm recording this before or after the essay, so I've already recorded the essay, and, I'm really bad at ending my spoiler warnings, so, bye. Hi, Danny Doyle here, and today I thought I'd do something different. Normally, I talk about video games and play video games, most notably Fire Emblem, although also sometimes things like Pokemon or the Soulsborne games. But I recently watched a movie that I have quite a few thoughts on, and I kind of wanted to share them with y'all because there's a narrative around this movie, Disney's new movie, Strange World. Have you heard of it? If you have, it's probably not from the official advertisement. This movie is really not being promoted, like, at all, whatsoever, by Disney. The way that I heard about it was on a Tumblr post discussing the conspiracy theory that Disney is currently intentionally burying this movie in order to justify not including woke things in their future cartoons. Because this is a very, shall we say, diverse movie. There's an openly gay character that is the 17th first ever openly gay character in a Disney movie. But there is also a black character, a mixed race character, who is one of the openly gay characters, and a character who is coded as an Indigenous American. It takes place in a fantasy place, so technically she wouldn't be a fantasy, or she wouldn't be an actual Indigenous American, because America doesn't exist in this fantasy world, but she has the trappings of an Indigenous American, both in the way that she presents herself and skin tone, and I'm fairly certain that this character is supposed to be an Indigenous American, and I feel comfortable calling her that. Also, the dog is three-legged, so I guess that's disabled representation. Ha ha, laugh, laugh. No, but this movie is definitely, much more progressive than most just generic Disney movies, and that, coupled with the fact that it isn't being advertised as heavily, has led a lot of people, specifically on Tumblr, to believe that the big evil megacorporation Disney is intentionally burying this as some sort of justification for go woke, go broke, in order to not have to be representative in other cartoons. And listen, I'm not going to claim that I know about the inner workings of Disney. This conspiracy may or may not have merit, but I do claim to know a thing or two about wokeness, and I hate to break it to y'all, but this movie isn't the woke savior that Tumblr seems to think it is. No, I should be clear. This is not a hashtag cancel Strange World video essay. This isn't going to be me claiming that it's somehow secretly racist or secretly actually regressive and conservative instead of being progressive. The movie is definitely more progressive than the average Disney movie. In fact, its progressiveness goes beyond simple representation. While representation is important, it's important to keep in mind that just because a movie cast is diverse doesn't necessarily make it progressive if the overall message is something that is reductive or regressive or otherwise quote-unquote unwoke. The two main themes of Strange World are learning to break the generational cycle of abuse and learning how to coexist with nature so that we do not drive ourselves to extinction. Both of these things would be described as politically left, and I would argue that Strange World does a good job depicting them and a good job investigating these often kind of complex issues. Overall, I like Strange World, and I like its messages, and I like its politics. But I do think it's important to acknowledge a very big way in which it fails, not only in quote-unquote wokeness, but also in sort of consistency in its message/morals. In order to examine this, I kind of need to summarize the main plot of Strange World. So, in the fantasy land of Avalonia, there is a plant called Pando, which provides what is functionally infinite electricity to the civilization. It is their only source of power, and they're able to harvest Pando berries and use it to power things like planes and cars and even just like television or whatever. However, for some reason, Pando is dying. It has something to do with the heart of Pando, which all Pando stalks eventually connect to no matter where you plant them. So the group of adventurers needs to get together on a giant flying boat and follow the routes down to the heart of Pando. Find out what's going on, fix it, and do so during the time limit before the Pando all dies and their civilization is left without any power. Due to complicated Disney shenanigans, 3 generations are together on this expedition. Jaegerclade, who is the eldest and is obsessed with exploring and hunting. Searcherclade, who is the father/middle generation, and he's a farmer obsessed with protecting his legacy of Pando and just living a relaxing farming life. And Ethanclade, who is the youngest, the grandson, and he's kind of interested in exploring, but he doesn't really know what he wants to do. He's like 16 years old. He's more interested in getting a boyfriend than anything else. Anyway, in order to try to facilitate some family bonding, and I promise this is important to the plot summary, Ethan tries to get his father and grandfather to play a game that is basically Settlers of Catan with him. However, both of them refuse to listen to him about the rules. Jaeger is obsessed with finding the monster and killing it in order to kill the bad guy, and Searcher is obsessed with staying away from the bad guy in order to start his farm. Ethan tries to explain to them that there are no bad guys, the goal is simply to coexist with nature and survive, but they both end up not listening to him and killing a spider, which results in the population the spider kept in check exploding, the environment collapses, yada yada yada. I'm sure you can see what this is a metaphor for. As it turns out, when they get to the heart of Pando, they learn, again through a complicated Disney series of events, that the world they live on is actually a living creature, a giant turtle. And the heart of Pando is actually the creature's heart. Pando is a parasite that is killing the creature, and rather than saving Pando, they need to kill Pando to save the creature's heart, which deprives their civilization of electricity, but keeps the creature alive and ultimately prevents them from dying as the creature dies. Overall, not only is it a fun kid's story, but it's a powerful environmental message, and anyone who is afraid that our rampant energy consumption is going to kill the planet that we depend on for life, I feel like I don't need to connect the dots for y'all as to why this feels like a left-leaning political message and something that is very prescient and important, and there's a reason that everyone is clinging onto it as like, this is the woke movie. And also, maybe that's the reason why people are convinced that Disney is burying it. Again, I'm not going to say that I believe or disbelieve that. I'm not going to claim to know anything about the inner workings of the evil megacorporation Disney. I think it could be a coincidence, but also, like, I wouldn't be surprised to learn they were burying it. Honestly, I also don't care. I find that kind of just a boring take, and that's not what this video essay is about. I want to talk about something that feels glaringly wrong with basically the final act of the movie, and that is the twist villain. Now, Disney is sort of in an era of twist villains. It started with Frozen, and it feels like every non-Pixar Disney film since then has had a twist villain of some sort. I feel like it worked in Frozen and really hasn't since then. Not even in Frozen 2, honestly, where the twist villain is it turns out their ancestors are evil or whatever. Especially if you go into a Disney movie expecting a twist villain, like, it always feels kind of forced, to be honest. In this case, it especially felt forced because, we had that Catan scene where Ethan explicitly says there is no villain. It's all about learning to coexist with nature. And initially, it plays out as if this is going to be the case. There is no villain. It turns out Searcher finds the heart and wants to spray it with pesticide to stop the pterodactyls that are attacking it from getting at it. Later, they find out that these pterodactyls are actually the immune system, and instead of using the pesticide to kill the pterodactyls, they decide to use pickaxes to try and destroy the pando. Lesson learned. Instead of attacking what we consider to be pests, we are attacking the invasive species in order to maintain the balance of nature and protect the creature that we live inside of. Except for then, out of nowhere, one of the characters says, "You must misunderstand what's going on. We're going to kill the pterodactyls anyway," for seemingly no reason. This doesn't even really add anything to the story. The main cast gets locked in a closet for all of 30 seconds before their animal companion Slime lets them out. They then prepare to retake the bridge, and as soon as they enter, the person in the bridge says, "I'm a bad pilot," runs away, and they get to retake it over. Heck, even the villain just stops trying to be a villain as soon as they get to the heart. She doesn't even try to stop them from killing the pando. She says, "Oh, I see it now, I understand." It's all of about 1 minute where she's decided to become the twist villain out of nowhere. It's very forced, and it doesn't even contribute towards the B-plot of breaking the cycle of generational trauma, which has to do with Jaeger and Searcher's relationship. That gets solved on its own without anything to do with the twist villain or the mother taking over the pilot seat or people getting locked in the closet. So it adds nothing to the story. It adds nothing to the overall theming. In fact, I would argue that it detracts from the theming. But that's not the strangest part of it. I would argue that the strangest and worst, and possibly most offensive part, is that the twist villain I've been talking about this whole time is Callisto. The character is coded to be an indigenous American. It is baffling to me that they decided to have the person who rejects the idea of living harmoniously with nature be the character who's coded as an indigenous American. They do come, thankfully, just short of a white savior narrative. The character who teaches Callisto that it is a heart and allows her to learn that you need to live harmoniously with nature is a black woman, so small miracles. But it is still very insulting that they chose an indigenous American to represent the idea of corporate greed and destroying nature for power. Now, obviously, greed and capitalism comes in all colors, but it still feels really glaring. The twist villain was unnecessary, but this just is the icing on the cake that makes it, I don't know, I would say offensive. I don't want to speak for indigenous Americans, but it feels offensive. By no means does it ruin the movie. I still think the movie has a great message, and it's also just a very fun kids movie. If you enjoy kids movies, go ahead and check it out. It's funny, it's visually entertaining, I'd recommend it. It gets, the good old Danny Doyle 5 stars out of 5. But I am just sort of hyper-fixated on this moment, especially because it is so close to the end, and it feels like it goes directly against the message that the movie was trying to tell. I don't know. I don't really have a cohesive end thought to this, so it's just a ramble about a movie that I enjoyed and wanted to spend roughly 13 minutes talking negative about, because my brain is broken.